Welcome back. Government agencies and the Office of Management and Budget are working on plans for employees to come back to offices all across government. But some federal employees who have been just as productive or more productive at home may not want to come back. Ricardo Pitts-Wiley is partner at Federal Practice Group. Ricardo, it's great to see you again. We talked a little bit before we went on the air about a conversation with an agency chief human capital officer that I had the end of last week, telling me, although that agency has not put out any plans or given any indication of what they want to do to come back, employees are already reaching out to that HR office and saying, we want to keep doing it the way that we're doing it. What can employees do? What should employees do in those conversations with their bosses and with their HR officials?
Well, at this point, in light of the pandemic, the federal government agency is still in a maximum telework policy status. So to the extent that, some employees have been brought back or are about to be brought back into the workplace, the best thing that those employees can do is start a dialogue with both their management chain as well as with human resources. These various human resources offices throughout these agencies are still in the process of developing, understanding, implementing the best approach to dealing with the pandemic. And there is an instruction or actually strong encouragement from the Office of Personnel Management for agencies to continue to be flexible in thinking about strategies. So start with a conversation and identify, what your concerns are, and also identify what your capabilities are.
And the capabilities piece is the part of it, I think, that is the most striking, because as I alluded to in the intro, Ricardo, there's a lot of folks that are demonstrating they could potentially continue to keep working remotely for the foreseeable future. And I wonder if there is an element to making that case that will be important for folks that want to do that. How does one go about deciding, this is how I'm going to show my office I'm doing what I need to do and I should keep going the way I'm going?
Well, it depends on the type of work that you do. Some particular positions, there are definable metrics in place, and so it's easy in that circumstance to show what your productivity rate has been. But otherwise, you should just demonstrate the type of work that you've been able to accomplish since the pandemic, since you've been on a telework status, and compare that to previous performance periods where there was no pandemic in place, and demonstrate that there has either been an increase or at least no decrease in terms of quality performance output.
If I have been doing that, can they make me come back to the office at some point? If I'm obviously getting the work done remotely, can they make me come back, Ricardo?
Well, unfortunately, performance is not the it does not provide an entitlement to be able to telework. But I do think that employees are in a good position now to be able to talk about telework because they've been able to do it successfully for a sustained period of time. And I also think managers are going to be hard pressed to require employees to come back into the workplace unless they're first able to demonstrate that it's absolutely safe there.
And that's where I wanted to go next. If I have reason to believe as the employee that it's not safe to go back, and they call me back, how do I make that case? And what are the real objective markers for that, rather than just something that I think? I imagine some of it's based on what my personal situation is, but some of it also might be based on what's going on in the building that they want me to go back to.
Right. So just as a general rule, an employer can instruct their employee to come into the workplace, but there are some restrictions on that. One obvious one, I think, is reasonable accommodations. If an employee believes that they are entitled to a reasonable accommodation, then again, that's a dialogue that they need to begin with their agency, and every agency has slightly different rules about how to do that. Either you can talk to your manager, or perhaps there's someone in human resources or a reasonable accommodation coordinator. But aside from that, if there are concerns about the safety of the work environment, then that is something that an employee can also still have a dialogue with management and human resources about, but also by going to OSHA. And OSHA, I believe, has been invigorated and emboldened to do more in light of recent memoranda and executive orders from President Biden. So I think that OSHA is going to play a much more significant and effective role in combating the pandemic and ensuring that individuals that don't need to be or should not be in the workplace due to their vulnerability will not have to be required to go into the office.
Ricardo, we have less than a minute left. What will you watch in the coming weeks as agency plans start to come out theoretically and as we start to see more policy about returning to the office?
Well, like I said, because of the pandemic, there has been a maximum telework policy status in place. And I just think it's going to be really difficult for us to return to pre-pandemic telework norms. So I expect there to be an expansion in terms of telework policies for all federal government agencies. And the reasons for doing so are long, and perhaps you'll have me come back on the show. We could talk just about that. But, you know, I think it's noteworthy that President Biden has issued instructions for the convening of an intra-agency task force to examine expanding telework for those in the national security workforce. And I think that that is going to be a significant and stark change from the past, because obviously there were, you know, significant concerns and legitimate concerns about individuals having access to classified information if they were not in a SCIF or not on site. So I think there's going to be a dramatic change in that particular area. So I'll be looking out for that.
Ricardo Pitts-Wiley, thanks very much for coming on. It's great to have you back.
Thank you.